Well, this is the whole point about Soros. Who the hell is this guy? He is a if you're talking about the deeper levels of the rabbit hole, he's a gopher, but he's a very influential gopher who serves his masters and gets enormous amounts of wealth as a result of it. There are lots of these people. And Soros is everywhere. Now, it's a very simple thing about Soros. If Soros wants it, the 1% want it. The controlling elite want it because he's a front man for them. And the last thing they want is the breakup of the European Union, because it's part of this incessant centralization of power, increasingly in the hands of bureaucrats, not even elected people, to dictate to the lives of people all over Europe. Now, the plan, of course, with the EU is not to let countries go, it's to absorb more and more. And so they had a massive shock with the Brexit referendum for a simple reason. The people of Britain at last had the opportunity to have their voice heard. You see, what's been happening more and more, and I've seen this decade after decade, is that the working class of Britain that supported the old traditional left has had no voice whatsoever. It's not had a voice, of course, through the right of centre Conservative Party, but it's not had a voice either through the alleged left of centre Labour Party, the traditional party of the urban working class in Britain, because particularly since Tony Blair, it was hijacked again by our version of this progressive mentality, to the point where you really couldn't tell the difference between left and right, and it's of course, if you look behind it, it's a one-party state anyway, like both sides of the Atlantic. But what the situation has been is that it's what I call the gimme vote. If you become a gimme vote, then it's over. You're not going to get any representation at all. And what I mean by that is that if you are a certain area of society, let's say the urban working class, then the Labour Party sees you as a gimme vote, because they say, well, who else are you going to vote for apart from us? So therefore, we don't have to look after the urban working class, because they're going to vote for us anyway. We've got to look and focus our attention and our rewards, if you like, for voting for us, with those that we need to spin the difference between not being elected and being elected. And so decade after decade, this urban working class in Britain has been completely neglected. No matter who they voted for, their voice was never heard. And then along came the Brexit referendum, which was a in-out simple choice, not having a political party involved to dilute the will of the people, if you like, and that's where it came from. But the gimme vote had been so taken for granted by then that it shocked the establishment that this referendum went the way it did. Now, of course, as I said, actually within an hour of the vote happening, this is just the start, because the establishment, the manipulative web is not going to accept this. They're going to try to stop it, and that's what we're seeing now, as you've quoted there, with George Soros funding these groups to try to overturn it. This is the whole thing that's going on, and to overturn the will of the people. And what you have is many people in politics, in the political class, whether left, right, centre, or whatever, who are behind this campaign to stop Brexit happening. And there is an elephant in the living room here. I mean, George Soros is described as the godfather of the left, because he massively funds these progressive groups and massively contributed to the takeover of the left of this progressive mentality. But then you've got people like Sheldon Adelson, who are described as the godfather of the right. these people with vast amounts of money are playing the political system right against left and pushing the world in a particular direction. And the number of people involved at the core, even at the gopher level where the money is handed out, is ridiculously few. But the thing about Orban is that he was re-elected quite recently with a big majority, and that gives him a lot of power within the country to stand up to what is happening, because of course he's under tremendous pressure too from the European Union that want to force quotas on Hungary, and he's resisting that as well, because it's just quite blatantly obvious what's happening. Anybody wants to open their mind and look. The idea is to transform European society and create divide and rule and conflict on the back of that. And we should also all remember that, the incoming migrants, the great majority of them, are just as much victims of this manipulation as the incoming population. And while a lot of a great number of Muslims do not want to integrate, some do. It's not completely black and white. The point is, you've got two groups of people who are coming from different cultural standpoints, who are being fused together for the benefit of a tiny elite that's actually behind it all. Well, when I say fusion, I mean coming together of two cultures. An enormous amount of it's not fusing at all in that sense of the word fusion. As we've seen in Sweden, you've got basically a ghetto situation, and this is the other point too. And you see this with MS-13 in America. That it's the migrant population that are massively being subjected to the imposition of migrant gangs that are forming in places like Germany and Sweden, criminal gangs. It's the migrant population that are that are most actually targeted by these people. I mean, who's targeted most by the triad groups out of China? It's Chinese people in the various countries, and so it's not black and white. It's about mentality, and the mentality of these gangs that are forming in Europe and in America is that anything goes. Anything goes, yeah. But the other point is this, and this is a reason why the Labour Party in Britain ignored its gimme vote and the wishes of its gimme vote, is because if you're a political party, say the Democrats in America, the Labour Party in Britain, and the migrant vote overwhelmingly goes to you, then the more migration, the more votes you perceive yourself to be going to get. I'm sure this is a major motivation of the Democratic Party in its open border policy. And we've just had this story out of Scotland where the Scottish National Party is proposing to give asylum seekers and those waiting to get citizenship, to give them the vote. And of course the SNP is doing that on the basis of its perception that they will almost certainly, in the great majority of numbers, vote for the SNP. So there are political motivations in all this as well, even on the party political level, which is nowhere near the real level of where this manipulation is coming from. So there are many aspects to this, but dividing and ruling and bringing disharmony to societies, because it's so easy to manipulate chaos as opposed to harmony, is the bottom line of all of it. You control people by their focus of attention.